Okay, so, yep, back at it. It's that beautiful time of the year again, with the gridiron slumbering for now. This is the perfect time to go back and remember the 2024-25 NFL season and the shenanigans that took place. The Eagles dominated, teams collapsed, and the Jets jetted. It was a fun season, so enough rambling, and let's go all the way back to the distant year of 2024 if your brain goes that far back, and recap the entire 2024-2025 NFL season. Days went by. Nothing. Silence. We sat in solitude and watched as the new free agents and younglings went through training camp. We drafted some awful fantasy teams, and then we all sat and watched the Kansas City Chiefs take on the Baltimore Ravens. It was a beautiful day. For the second year in a row, the new dictators of happiness and fun in red played in the season opener, and this time took on Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, who had a new toy to play with in Derrick Henry. So, was this enough to finally beat the Chiefs? Well, no. Hell fucking no it wasn't. Mahomes has too much testosterone flowing through his balls, because honestly, people thought Kansas City would finally be slowing down, but no, not at all. Rashee Rice was a dog. Xavier Worthy was, in fact, still fast, and the defense was absolutely smothering Derrick Henry, making him just look like Latavius Murray with longer hair. But the Ravens put up a hell of a fight, and it was clear these were two elite teams that were definitely going to be competing at the top of the AFC for the entire season. However, It came down to this. The Ravens in the red zone messed up as Zay Flowers and Lamar had some miscommunication on this play, and then Lamar found Isaiah Likely to call game.
Runner's toe, hit out of bounds. It's an incomplete pass. Automatic Chiefs win.
Never mind. Chiefs win. So that was how the season started out. You know, pretty normal, right? Well, don't worry, because Packers-Eagles is live from Neoquímica Arena in Brazil on a Friday. Well, that's cute, huh? What a novelty. At least the field was well kept, though, and the NFL prioritized player health over exposure, and thankfully no injuries took place. But week one also right away answered a lot of questions. The Minnesota Vikings had a bit of a quarterback problem. J.J. McCarthy tripped on his pet turtle and was out for the season, and in the wake of that horrible tragedy, Sam Darnold was going to be Minnesota's quarterback for the season, much to the delight of this, abomination. Right away, though, Sam Darnold balled out and was leading the MVP race in week one damn near. And meanwhile, my MVP favorite before the season, Joe Burrow, lost to the Patriots, as the Bengals defense already showed glaring flaws, but we all turned a side eye to it for now. And then Deshaun Watson also is still bad at football, turns out, and the Browns made Dallas look like contenders. Tyreek Hill was detained by the police before the game and did a cheeky little celebration too. I mean, what a great citizen he is. So, you know, average week overall, honestly. It was good to have football back, but the chaos would only begin, and Sunday Night Football delivered. Rams versus Lions. My favorite game from 2 seasons ago now got another must-watch rematch. Stafford versus Detroit is just peak entertainment, and as usual, the game was fun, but the Rams weren't prepared because they had their third-team O-line basically finishing the game. I don't know what happened. Their injury slider got jacked to the max, and the whole team got hit with a cataclysmic infestation of unknown proportions. The whole O-line was just decimated with injuries. Stafford got hurt, Puka got hurt, and this led to them getting 51 offensive snaps from A.J. Arcuri. Dude hasn't played since 2022 and never played again this season outside of the last pointless game of the year. So with all the injuries, the Lions won the game and all seemed well, but the Rams sneakily managed to get that injury curse off them and through dark witchcraft, landed it on their opponents in this game. So we move into week 2, and Tua got another concussion. Yeah, remember that? Remember when everyone wanted Tua to retire again? It happens like every season, and it's probably going to happen again, so we'll see. But he was already playing poorly versus Buffalo, and that concussion was just kind of how the whole Dolphin season ended up going. But he didn't retire, and then week 2 threw us some curveballs at 180 miles per hour. The Raiders, the Las Vegas Football Raiders, beat the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, and all of a sudden Lamar Jackson was 0-2 with a loss to Gardner Minshew on his resume. God, I hope I never see this man in a black uniform ever again. But we did it, and meanwhile, our old quarterback was tearing it up in the Big Easy. Over their first 2 games, the New Orleans Saints scored 91 combined points as they embarrassed the Panthers in Dallas, and they looked for real. And meanwhile, another team joined the Ravens at 0-2 in their very own division. the Cincinnati Bengals. I picked them to win the bloody Super Bowl, so that's not ideal. And after a fun game versus the Chiefs, I still think this Cam Taylor-Britt pick was underratedly one of the best picks of the season. The game still ended in Kansas City's favor, as usual, with Rashee Rice getting smacked, pass interference, Chiefs win at the last second. And there will be more where that came from. Then we got week 3, and I definitely didn't expect a Malik Willis revenge game versus the Titans, who meanwhile have been on a generational run with Will Levis crumbling to the floor 8 times a game. But without Jordan Love in Green Bay, who was sacrificed to an altar in Brazil, Malik Willis balled out and became forever loved in Green Bay. And Will Levis continued to disappoint, but he was not alone, of course. Anthony Richardson had MVP potential before the season, but even in his, quote, good game in week 1 versus Houston, he still showed a complete lack of development as a passer, and that was not going to come in 2024. But even more disappointing was the former first overall pick Bryce Young, because he was expected to take a massive leap in this new Dave Canal system, but his first fucking pass was a pick, and through 3 weeks, he was quite literally the worst quarterback in football. So they benched him. The Panthers had enough, and in came the They beat us by 30. I went to this game, and I knew 100% this was going to happen, but I went anyways, because why not? All the pain is the same. It's all the same. What's the fucking difference? What is the difference? The Lions did this cute little flip play for a touchdown. That was cool. But on Monday Night Football, which I think it's a bad rep, for me it's kind of annoying to not be able to get a recap out earlier because it exists, but this year Monday Night Football was largely good stuff. And Bengals versus Commanders, man. Damn, Joe. Why do they want to see my man suffer like this? Look, I think a fun little experiment would be to show someone Joe Burrow's stats this year that had no idea what happened to the Bengals season and just what it devolved into, and ask them what record they think the Bengals had. And they'd probably say like 13 wins or something like that. And in this one, Joe Burrow went for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. And they lost. Jaden Daniels just had a ridiculous game and overall obviously had a historic rookie season. And it was born on this day, as Cincinnati's life essence was siphoned out of them and transferred into Dan Quinn's shiny cranium. And then in week 4, the goofiness came back in full swing. Saints vs. Falcons was probably the tamest of weird games, as the Saints allowed a 5-yard passing game-winning drive from Captain Kirko, and the injuries absolutely destroyed their season and left them with no hope. We then hard pivot to check in on Sam Darnold, who's still incinerating peasants and ruling the land, but it's time to discuss the New York Jets, who so far have been disappointing, believe it or not. But in week 4, the roof caved in on them and slowly suffocated their entire fan base to death. Versus the Broncos, Bo Nix, in a rainstorm, could not complete a pass. He had negative passing yards in the first half, and the Jets were in complete control. The following clips should not be displayed to younger viewers. The New York Jets pissed this entire game away in every way possible, and this entire game is the most symbolic thing I've ever seen. The season ended here, on this day, in this very game. And some Jets fans who've been around the block knew it, but others believed in Aaron Rodgers. We then go over to see what was going on in Jacksonville, because this team had such an underratedly shit season. I don't understand why they don't get dunked on more. This team had playoff aspirations at least, and instead, they ended up with Travis Hunter by year's end. And they lost on a game winner versus Houston. Mahomes assassinated Rashee Rice with one of the worst plays ever pound for pound, throwing a pick and then ending his best receiver season. And on prime time, the Ravens picked apart the Bills, and it turns out Derrick Henry is still good at football. Week 5 then started with a Mike Breen bang and a half. Buccaneers versus Falcons. What a game this was. And Young Hoku had a wild arc in this game alone. He basically missed 2 crucial kicks in a row, but he would wait for his chance of redemption, because meanwhile, the Kirk Cousins-Baker Mayfield shootout was real. And Baker in particular had been amazing all year, but this game would come down to mistakes. And Darnell Mooney dropped a big pass that looked like it was going to be game-ending, but then Bucky Irving outdueled him, coughed it up, and now Young Hoku redeemed himself for now, and the Falcons got a walk-off touchdown, and Thursday Night Football, being the coin flip it was, delivered a good game this time instead of just being unwatchable slop. Bengals versus Ravens was absolute cinema. And how do you think the game went, huh? Joe Burrow played a perfect game and then lost anyways because Lamar Jackson was doing bullshit like this. He's so good, man. Lamar's stupid good. Jamar Chase popped off. Burrow popped off with 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, and they lost the football game. So, man, I'm excited to say that 6 more times this year. But first, prepare yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Are you aroused? Well, you will be, don't worry, because get soggy for the one and only Joseph Vincent Flacco, because he played football this week. It wasn't permanent yet, so, hold on, but hey, for Colts fans, excitement is excitement, and he delivered for a small time, but he'll be a recurring character, don't worry. Our season also ended after Gardner Minshew lost his job, but added a few chromosomes on this throw, so that was good. Don't remember much else from the game. The only note I wrote was I don't like Ja'Cory Bennett, and the 49ers also blew a horrid game versus the Cardinals, and the Steelers and Cowboys underratedly played one of those games that I'll probably always remember. The game was on Sunday Night Football because Cowboys, and it also started even later because, I don't know, the weather gods were pissed, so whatever was happening, I wasn't even picking up on because I was half asleep watching the game, because it was a classic Arthur Smith versus Mike McCarthy game as usual, but the ending was so hype, as after a crazy sequence where Dallas fumbled but got it back, on 4th down, Dak found Jalen Tolbert, and the Cowboys would go on to win the Super Bowl. Week 6 Bears football, yay! I feel so bad that I haven't had time so far to discuss the historic success that was the 2024 Chicago Bears. Under George Howell, I mean Matt Eberflus, the Chicago Bears became the NFL's premier team. Look, they beat the Jaguars by so many points. I'm so happy for them. Love to see it, Bears. Keep it up. We'll check on the Bears next week. I'm sure they'll be fine. This was the week that injuries kind of set in. In New England, Drake May was set to get consumed after his makeshift O-line was fielding arguably the worst player ever, but he looked pretty good. Then in Detroit, Aiden Hutchinson suffered a season-ending injury, changing the entire landscape of the NFL as a whole, because the Lions, when healthy, literally were untouchable for the most part. Around the NFL also, the Chiefs were still considered the best, as teams like the Eagles and Bills hadn't really hit their strides yet. And speaking of Buffalo, they had a football game versus the Jets. Now, this game had me geeking once again. My notes are not giving me too much information here, but it was a good time. The tuck rule actually came into play. The Zebras were on the prowl, and Rodgers threw a game-losing pick. Nice. Saints versus Broncos. Thursday Night Football. Sadly, I have a functioning memory somewhat, and I watched the highlights of this game. Again, I'm sad now. But week 7 at least gave us, Vikings-Lions. That was cool, and ended up being huge for seeding, but nah, I can't lie. This week was probably the most boring week of the season. The 49ers and Chiefs had a Super Bowl rematch, but the 49ers were not the same team they were the year prior, and the Chiefs dominated slowly, as is par for the course, and Mahomes trucked Mustafa. I mean, bro, we had Steelers-Jets on Sunday Night Football. Even I didn't want to watch that game, but alas, the Demons won, and I got to watch Davante Adams debut as a Jet, and it was great. Just flawless. I'm really glad I drafted Garrett Wilson this year, and of course the Jets got f***ed anyways. Week 8 started off slow again, so it looked like it was going to be another boring week, but this is usually around the time of year where things start to heat up, and that is exactly what went down. The Rams beat the Vikings on a bad no-call face mask, which spoiled an otherwise solid Thursday game. Brandon McManus was becoming the hero of Green Bay with his 2nd game winner in a row, and then Jameis Winston returned. The Cleveland Browns pivoted from Joe Flacco 2 years ago to Jameis, and he was so much better than Deshaun Watson, who was out for the season by this point, and the Browns pulled off the upset of the damn season versus the Ravens. The Browns defense last year had some wild ability to flip-flop between the 85 Bears and the 2014 Raiders, but this game was only part of that, and the fate of the game would be decided entirely by Jameis Winston. And with time running out, he should have thrown a pick, but it was dropped, and then he proceeded to throw a bomb for a game-winning touchdown. And this is only level 3 of this week. The New York Jets. We're going back to that well of misery, everyone. Let's pile on the Jets because they lost to the Patriots. Robert Saleh, remember, got fired for basically nothing before this game. Surely he was all the team's problems, and it turns out Davante Adams' brilliant inspirational speech didn't really connect with the teammates. And without Drake May, the Patriots came back and now officially just ended the season of the Jets before the halfway point of the year. You know, I don't know about you. Let me get a little emotional here for a second, but there's still times that I wake up in the morning and I just go, man, I miss Matt Eberflus. I really do. The pure joy that man brought to my life is a void that is yet to be filled, so let's talk Commanders versus Bears. By this point, dead serious, the Chicago Bears were a good team and seemed very easily on track to make the playoffs. And this game was set up as the battle between the number 1 pick in Caleb Williams and the number 2 pick in Jaden Daniels. But as he did all season, Jaden Daniels bought the Commanders a chance. Just a chance to do something. But it wasn't enough because all they had left was a Hail Mary attempt, and the Bears decided to rush three people? Oh, fuck.
With the game on the line, and the ball is caught!
We then got more Jets football in the next week because on Thursday Night Football, the game sucked. Let me make that clear. Al Michaels was seconds away from just dying on live TV. Malachi Corley fumbled on the 1, but the Jets still won, which is why it's funny. Versus the Texans. It's objectively hilarious. The Jets were kind of good on paper, and they had their moments. Devontae popped off, and they exposed the Texans' number 1 flaw, that being their protection. But this week was cool overall. The Bills almost lost to the free-falling Dolphins after Tyler Bass himself. Saquon did the thing this week, which covered up a near horrid collapse versus Jacksonville, but Trevor Lawrence threw a game-losing pick. The Cardinals blew out the Bears, and their free fall was in full swing. And we also randomly got a great game between the Rams and Seahawks. I bet a bunch of you didn't even remember this game, let alone watch it. But it was wild. There were 2 block punts. Geno threw a pick 6, and then another pick, and after 15 tries, the Seahawks got it to overtime. But in the end, the Rams somehow won the game anyways, and DeMarcus Robinson got a one-handed dime from Stafford, and the walk-off touchdown ended the game. Just an underratedly crazy year from the Rams. The primetime games this week were also kind of weird. Vikings versus Colts does not sound like a Sunday night football game, but Joe Flacco got handed the keys to the team after Anthony Richardson was controversially benched, and boy, did it not go well. And then on Monday, we got Chiefs versus Bucks, which was a fun game. The Chiefs overcame a great Baker Mayfield performance, who's been a dog all year, and then pulled it out at the last second. And then it happened again in the very next week. Broncos versus Chiefs, week 10. Boy, oh boy, the script writers were truly on one this week. The Broncos looked better than the Chiefs. They just did. But nope, doesn't matter. Denver's chip shot game-winning kick was blocked, and the Chiefs stay undefeated somehow. But on Thursday, we got another installment of Ravens versus Bengals, and it was another instant classic. Joe Burrow, masterclass. Jamar Chase, masterclass. Derrick Henry, ass. This game had it all. And what do you think happened again? I mean, I'm running out of words. Joe Burrow, again, had 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, and they lost. Lamar Jackson, why do you do this to people? And that's it. The Bengals were cooked right then and there because their defense had a tough time pressing a ham sandwich at the line of scrimmage this year. We also got Panthers versus Giants in Germany. Yeah, but this was basically the week of the kicker. Every year has one of these weeks, and this was it. Not only did we get the Chiefs game happening, but Jake Moody almost choked a game single-handedly versus the Bucks. And on Sunday Night Football, Detroit Lions faced the Houston Texans, and Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions, not even halfway through the third quarter. And they won! Jake Bates ended up putting the team on his back. The Texans played a terrible game, and they missed a huge kick themselves, which led to the Lions' win, and I don't even remotely understand what's happening anymore. In Week 11, things slowed down a bit. The Bears' traveling psych ward kept going as they had another win in the bag, but because it's the 2024 Bears, of course not. The 49ers blew another late lead to the Seahawks and Geno Smith, which meant Kyle Shanahan added 18 more gray hairs to his beard. Michael Penis saw some action, which was cool, even though they got smashed by Denver, and Kirk Cousins was basically done on this day. The Chiefs then finally lost a game to the Bills, and Chargers-Bengals was cool, and I don't even need to say it anymore, man. Of course, the Bengals got their hearts ripped out again, but Week 12... things were back on track, and so was Tommy DeVito. And by back on track, I mean he was right back to being one of the worst quarterbacks this game's ever seen. And I don't know what was happening in that division this week, because also the Cowboys and Commanders played this week. And I'll be honest, most of this game was forgettable. Not much happened, but after Cavante Turpin returned this kick, doing his best Deshaun Jackson impersonation, the game shifted into maximum overdrive. With 20 seconds left, buried in their own territory, the Commanders had no hope, but then Terry McLaurin came to save the day, and holy shit, the Cowboys are going to blow it. This is an unprecedented collapse that will never be forgotten.
For the tie. Low snap. It is no good.
What, damn it. Okay, well, I wish I could say that's it, but the funniest part is, the Cowboys decided to house the onside kick, which gave the Commanders another chance that actually would have made this the craziest game in NFL history if they converted. But they didn't, so this game stole all the headlines, but there was more going on in the NFL. The Titans beat the Texans as their concerns continued. The Panthers almost beat the Chiefs, and Bryce Young's career was being revived out of nowhere. And on Sunday Night Football, Saquon Barkley and the Eagles truly hit their stride, as he had one of the best games of his career with 255 yards, and the 2,000-yard mark was realistically in his sights. It's Thanksgiving time now, yay! And what better way to show your love for gravy and shit by watching the Chicago Bears absolutely melt down in the greatest form of entertainment possible. The Lions were kicking the hell out of the Bears early, but Caleb Williams is good at football and was having an amazing second half, but it was stopped in its tracks by a classic Matt Eberflus moment. I'm not sure I've seen a worse clock disaster in my life. The fact that the Bears ended this game with a timeout is mind-boggling. And the Bears threw the game and fired Matt Eberflus after, and the other two games, Giants, Cowboys, and Dolphins, Packers, literally could not have been more forgettable. We almost beat the Chiefs too, or we did. Well, we literally did. We showed so much resilience. We battled back, but the refs took the game from us. And the Chiefs pulled it out of their hairy asses again, but whatever, it is what it is. That's the status quo at this point. The Chiefs get whatever they want, but also, at the same time, the Jets delivered the comedy yet again versus Seattle. Leonard Williams, of all people, who, by the way, had a random amazing season and got a revenge pick six that turned the game on its head. The Jets punter went down, they got killed by penalties, and somehow lost the game, and they were now 3-9. The Bucs played a super fun game versus the Panthers, if you remember. It went to overtime. Chuba Hubbard fumbled. Good stuff. The Eagles took care of the Ravens in a potential Super Bowl matchup, and on Monday we got more Jameis ball, and Jerry Jeudy went absolutely ballistic out of scenic all nowhere. He had 235 yards, and still the game, of course, ended on a Jameis pick six. A complete balance as always. Week 14 started out fun with Lions versus Packers. You know, it was a close game, and it'd be a tragedy if I didn't mention a Dan Campbell nutsack-size moment in this video, right? Because his fourth down decision was insane, but it won them the game. But also, people began to worry about the contenders. The Panthers came a Xavier Legette drop away from beating the Eagles, and the Rams took down the Bills, exposing their defense despite Josh Allen, who I feel like I should have talked about more at this point, but he kind of grabbed the MVP for himself on this day with 6 total touchdowns. But as it turns out, with a healthy Puka Nacua, the Rams are a high tier 2 team, and the Jets subplot just kept going strong. So by this point in week 15, things were getting serious. It was really heating up. The Rams versus 49ers was simply a game that decided which team could keep their slim playoff hopes alive, and which team's season would end. And well, the 49ers went home. The defending NFC champions were embarrassed at home by a Rams team that didn't even play well. Debo had a bad drop, Purdy threw a bad pick, and that was it. Their season ended, and with that, the Jets now decided to lock the fuck in with the season over. Rodgers and Devontae Adams took over the game versus the Jaguars to start ruining their tank. Tim Boyle played football for the Giants. Lamar Jackson gave Josh Allen a run for his money for the MVP, too, with a perfect game of his own, and the Lions and Bills played in a hyped-up matchup that didn't live up to expectations, because the Bills just demolished the Lions, as it became clear that, sadly, this was not the same Detroit team as early in the season due to injuries. Monday Night Football. Raiders versus Falcons. Sweet mercy. Couldn't we have just canceled this game? Who else watched this one? Please tell me it's under 4 of you. Desmond Ridder versus Kirk Cousins was not fun, and we almost won this game. These two terrible, terrible teams were playing their worst football, and we almost did enough with Sincere McCormick, but luckily, we fell just short and the tank rolled on. But don't worry, because our fight to ruin our tank began next week, because we played against the Jaguars with Mac Jones, who somehow were worse than us, and we kissed our Cam Ward hopes goodbye on that day. Truly sad. I don't like you, Amir Abdullah. But besides that, it was another slow week, as it was clear the season was winding down and the postseason was growing closer and closer. And injuries were gonna play a factor, unfortunately. Tank Dell suffered an injury he's still recovering from right now. Jalen Hurts went down versus the Commanders in a loss, and the Packers and Saints low-key played one of the most boring games of the year. I just honestly forgot the game happened, so I wanted to mention it. Christmas football, woohoo! We all got to crowd around the Christmas tree, and old Saint Nick got to see Russell Wilson get a train run on him by the Chiefs, and Lamar Jackson also obliterated the Texans, so really underwhelming stuff. But Broncos versus Bengals delivered the heat for how disappointing both of those Christmas games were. Because if you watched every Bengals game without, being a Bengals fan, they were really entertaining this year, and it looked like this was just going to be a textbook Bengals buffoonery game. They had it won, in theory, but then Marvin Mims at 5'11 turned into prime Terrell Owens and started putting the team on his back, and it was happening again, because the Bengals needed this game to hypothetically stay alive in playoff contention, and Joe Burrow was asked to do everything himself, and he delivered. It took some time, but T. Higgins called game, and the Bengals remained a dangerous team to face in the playoffs if they got in. But besides that, not much happened in the main slate on Sunday. Packers vs. Vikings was cool, I guess. Kenny Pickett threw himself. The Cardinals season ended, but on Sunday Night Football, the Falcons vs. Commanders was a great game. Both quarterbacks, Penix and Daniels, the younglings, played very, very well. But it was the clock again. The Falcons just absolutely fucked up the clock, missed a field goal, and Jaden Daniels won the game on a wild touchdown drive and clinched my fantasy championship in the process. What a goat. Historically, Week 18 has always been very hit or miss, and this year it definitely was a miss. The Chiefs rested like every starter versus the Broncos, so the Bengals got eliminated as collateral. The Titans clinched the #1 pick. Mike Evans got 1,000 yards again to keep the streak going on a pointless pass. And the game of the week, the only game that mattered, other than the Broncos versus Chiefs game, which wasn't even a game, was Vikings versus Lions, to decide which team would have to run the gauntlet on the road and which could rest as the top seed, and it was not even close. The lights were simply too bright for Sam Darnold, and the Lions kicked the shit out of them, and things did not get better for the Darnold from there. The wild card was finally here. The NFL playoffs started, and things were, cool, but I'll be honest, the wild card was not all that. Justin Herbert and the Chargers, who I feel like I only mentioned like once this year because they were pretty boring all season, had a complete blow-up versus the Texans and were sabotaged by the dirty bubble, to be fair, while contenders like the Ravens, Eagles, and Bills all easily dealt with their prey with little issues for the most part, and the only good game we got was Bucs versus Commanders, which was the game I was looking forward to the most, and it was all that I thought it could be. Lattimore versus Evans is always a great time, and Marshawn was getting treated like a used dog toy all game. The coaching was amazing. It was just a really high-level football game, and when the Commanders failed the fourth down, it looked like the Bucs had the game won, and then
ninth all time in NFL history. The ball's down. Mayfield lost it, and Washington pulls it away.
That just sucks. Once again, all credit to the Commanders, but people forget they were one oopsie away from Tampa Bay just winning this game, and their season could have ended right there. But instead, Jaden Daniels' magical campaign continued, and then we got Rams versus Vikings. I was so high in the Vikings. All they needed to do was have Sam Darnold play just okay football, and instead, he looked like a third-string long snapper being forced to play emergency quarterback. He wasn't comfortable for even a second in this game, and the Rams blew the doors out of the Vikings, even with their home stadium not even being an option for them. And just like that, this 14-win team was gone in the wild card. The divisional round was way better, though. The Chiefs vs. Texans game was kind of slow, as Kansas City just did what they always do and strangled Houston to death. But then we got Commanders versus Lions. Oh boy. The wound is still fresh, I gotta tell you, and I'm not even a Lions fan. I'm sorry, you guys deserve better, but the first half of this game made it seem like we had an all-timer on our hands. Both teams were playing a near-perfect game. This was such a high-tier offensive clinic from both sides, but then one team kept making zero mistakes while the other was making back-breaking ones. As the Lions threw a terrible pick that led to Jared Goff getting exploded, Jameson Williams threw a pick too, and that was it. Jaden Daniels found Terry McLaurin for a score, and that was the end of the Lions' best season in franchise history, as 3 NFC North teams made the playoffs and none of them won a game. The Eagles also took on the Rams in a snowstorm, which is always peak football, but the Eagles did not look that good. Luckily, their defense was still carrying, but Jalen Hurts was clearly unhealthy, and they just kept the Rams around a little too long, giving them a chance. And Puka Nacua is a demon, so do not do that. But the Rams' offensive line picked the worst time of the season to have a full-on meltdown, and Los Angeles' Cinderella run was over. And finally, Ravens versus Bills happened, and it was awesome as well. It sucked to see Lamar kind of struggle again early, but he bounced back, and after being down by 2 scores, the Ravens were right there to try and steal the game on the road. Now, Lamar was also doing all of this without Zay Flowers, and with Mark Andrews having one of the worst games of his career with a huge fumble, but Buffalo's conservative play calling let them back in the game, and they began to drive. You know how this ends. Just play the clip.
Got it! Oh, the ball was dropped!
Championship round time. Let's do it. Okay, so we had Eagles versus Commanders, which was literally never a game. Philly played their best game of the season damn near to this point, and Saquon Barkley, the unanimous best back all year, had a breakaway touchdown right away, and Washington never stood a chance versus an all-time great team on paper that was now playing as a unit, which then led to another installment of Chiefs versus Bills, the modern-day equivalent to Brady versus Manning, Allen versus Mahomes. And it was fun, as always. Like, I'm sorry, I don't care how much you might hate the Chiefs. The entertainment they're giving us, especially in the playoffs, has been awesome. The Chiefs had control of the game, but Buffalo wasn't going away like that. Not with that version of Josh Allen. Not this season. And after a James Cook touchdown, Arrowhead was getting worried. But the defense was the strength of the team all year. And on 4th down, they stopped Josh Allen by centimeters. And from there, the Chiefs just did enough. And Dalton Kincaid couldn't bring in a tough pass with Samaje Perine calling game, because of course he did. And the Kansas City Chiefs just continue to do the impossible. So in the Super Bowl, could their luck keep going for just one more game? Well, absolutely not. We ended up getting a horrible Super Bowl, all things considered, as the game was over in the second quarter. But for many, this was a great Super Bowl. It was satisfying to see the Chiefs get so overwhelmed in every way, because on paper, this is what should have happened. And finally, the law of averages set in, and the Philadelphia Eagles crushed the Chiefs dynasty and won the Super Bowl. They're second in the last 10 years. And that's how the 2024-2025 season ended, with Mahomes on the losing end of things and the Philadelphia Eagles holding the Vince Lombardi trophy. But anyways, that was the 2024-2025 NFL season. So I hope you really enjoyed this video, because this recap is always one that I really enjoy making, and I know you guys like it too. So thanks for watching, and if you like this video, then watch this video I did a few weeks ago on Tom Brady and his entire career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's pretty good, trust me. And thanks to all my Patrons for pledging money. It truly does mean a lot. But anyways, until next time.